My name is Chigozie Onyema, Assemblyman from the 28th Legislative District. Incredibly excited to be here with Councilwoman Amina Bey from the Central Ward. You know, the Councilwoman has been with us from the very beginning, and we've been with her from the very beginning. It's been an incredibly supportive and helpful partnership. And so just to be in conversation here is really special, really exchanging notes, learning from each other. And I think that exchange is really what builds a stronger Newark. So just incredibly excited to be here.
Hey, Newark, what's good? This is your Central Ward Councilwoman Amina Bey, and we are here with Mic Check Newark. I have a very special guest today, our hometown hero from the West Ward that's now doing his thing in Trenton, our new Assemblyman, Chigozie Onyema. Brother Chigozie, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's so good to be with you.
So, you went from the West Ward to the State House.
Mm-hmm.
How has that transition been?
Wow, the transition's actually been beautiful. I think one of the beautiful things about being at the state level is that you have an opportunity to really shape policy for the entire state. So it's not just the West Ward, it's the city of Newark. It's not just Newark, it's Essex County. It's not just Essex, it's all 21 counties, right? So we get an opportunity to shape policy that affects working people everywhere. And also just really be in relationship to a bunch of people, some of whom are like-minded, but all of whom I think are trying to work on behalf of working people. So to me, it's been an amazing transition. Feel good, feel fortunate, feel blessed. I'm glad to be there.
We're so happy for you. And, we supported you from the beginning.
Beginning.
So we talk about grassroots organization and how you build a coalition. And you gave a masterclass on how to do that. So let's just say that. You gave a masterclass on how to build community, how to galvanize, how to engage our people. How do you feel that what you've done here in Newark and in the West Ward prepares you for what you're doing now in Trenton as Assemblyman?
Absolutely. I think a lot of politics is organizing. I spent my entire life in one way or the other organizing, my entire adult life at least. So when I just think about how my journey started, my first foray into electoral politics really was when my family moved from Newark. We were in Hill Manor on Martin Luther King. Then we moved to Maplewood. Hill Manor caught fire. A bunch of people ended up moving out. Our families moved out as well. And when I went to the suburban school system, what ends up happening is that you have a tracking system. So you start to track kids based on ability. So I was fortunate enough in 6th grade to be tracked at the highest levels, but I was the only one in my friend group, and in fact, probably the only Black person who was tracked in the highest levels. But what that meant for me was that in 6th grade, I go from having a class with all my friends, all my peers, to being like the only Black guy, to feeling isolated. And as I sort of matriculate through middle school and in high school, that sort of replays itself, right? To the point where you can look inside of any classroom in a school district and you can tell what ability groups it was based purely on demographics. And so for me, it was like, okay, what do we do about some of this, right? Something didn't feel right. I don't have the language that I have today to understand race and class and gender and struggle. But at the time, I knew something was wrong. And I had an incredible educator, Melissa Cooper, who actually teaches at Rutgers Newark right now. And Melissa Cooper was really politicizing me and saying, you know what, if you want to, you don't have to accept anything accept anything in the world as it is. You get to shape it. You get to give form to it, right? And you do that by organizing. And so I asked her, what do we do to sort of shift the tracking system? She says, well, those decisions are made at the school board level. So I said, okay, well, so let's make different decisions at the school board level. And she said, well, you got to run. So that's when I decided to first run for office. And what I learned in that period, I lost the race, but it was an incredibly exciting election. What I learned is that organizing means building relationships. Organizing is about addition, not subtraction, right? It's about bringing more and more people together. And it's about bringing people together around issues that are relevant to them. And so for me, when I think about organizing, whether it's in the West Ward, whether it's for the State Assembly, it's always been about bringing people together around issues that are important to them, because you can always have a correct analysis, but it doesn't matter if it's not relevant to folks. Right. And so for me, when we were in Ivy Hill, being a part of the neighborhood association, organizing with the Fairmont Neighborhood Association, I'm organizing district leaders. It was always about trying to talk about issues that are relevant to people and bringing people together to build power so that we change it. So for me, that's what my work has always been about. And I think it translates well to the state level, because ultimately you're trying to organize legislators around issues that are important to them too, whether it's about their constituents, whether it's about the individual interests, trying to always organize people, bring them together so we can kind of get things moved and so we can build power for our people.
So was it the intensity and the growth of the organization that led you from, so you ran for school board, didn't get that, ran for West Ward, didn't get that, but gained so much more support. Then, of course, you go to Assembly. So some people would think, well, why am I going to keep going up? I didn't get it on this level, but you kept going up, and now you're the state assemblyman. So what do you think, what was the difference? How did you go from one level to the other?
Yeah, I think, sometimes it's just time, space, and condition, like what was going on in that moment. The West Ward, at the time I ran in 22. Mm-hmm. So, West Ward Councilman at that time got in a little bit of trouble. Mm-hmm. So we knew that the seat was going to change hands. Mm-hmm. And we had been organizing in the ward before we ran in ways that some people don't fully appreciate, right? So we'd already been out there, already been talking to folks. And so when the time came, we threw our hat in there, we already had some deep relationships in the community, and it was about building on that. And so we decided to build on it. And when we came up short, for me, again, I've been organizing my whole adult life. I wasn't going to stop just because I lost an election. Right. So we kept going. And what it took, it started to look like the district leaders. Then I said, okay, well, in 2024, we got district leaders. Senator Rice was, transitioning, and there was a void. And so we said, we're going to fill that void. So all the people we had been engaging over the course of the election, we got back in touch with them and said, you know what, we need y'all to step up as leaders. Because during the race, we talked about building block associations throughout the ward. And so many of the people that we engaged around that block association question, we said, you know what, maybe you should step up and be a district leader. Mm-hmm. So we ran 55 people. We didn't win all the seats, but we won a good number of those seats. And we were fortunate enough to be elected chair. And so that becomes, okay, that's the first step. And then it's like, all right, that's 24. So now 25 is coming about. Now in 25, it's like, okay, there might be an opportunity here to think about what it looks like to engage at the state level. And for the first time, the line wasn't there anymore. So the ballot line goes away, and it means that it's a much more democratic process. So we have a real opportunity to organize and win. Right. And I had relationships not only in the West Ward, but in Maple and in South Orange and Irvington. So it was an opportunity to really bring all of those pieces together and get elected. So we took advantage of that. We had the convention. We were fortunate enough to win that convention. And we just kept going. And we're going to keep going. We're going to keep on going.
I see. So. But I remember that election. I remember that race. And of course, I always got to, give a shout out to my mother, Frederica Bey, Queen Frederica.
Absolutely, yes, indeed.
In the West Ward, one of your most staunchest supporters.
Yes, she still does.
She galvanized the whole community.
Yes, she did.
And told everybody, vote for my baby. Mm-hmm. That's what she said, vote for my baby. But the thing is that what I love about that is that you were able to engage the seniors and the youth.
Yes.
Okay, you had them come together. I mean, you had an intergenerational coalition going on. Yeah. How do you do that? How do you get, because they have so many different interests and so many different reasons for being engaged or not being engaged. Mm-hmm. But to bring them all together under this one umbrella, what do you think that was?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I mean, I think that it helps that a lot of my peers were some of those young folks at the time I was running. So it was helpful to kind of be in conversation with people who, either I went to school with or grew up with or just otherwise built relationships with. I think that helped. But also I think that in many ways they're different issues, but I think folks ultimately face so many of the same issues, right? We think about the question of affordability right now, whether it's rent, whether it's groceries, whether it's childcare. Because even if you're a senior who doesn't have children anymore, you might have grandchildren, right, who are facing childcare issues. If you're a young person, you might have a young kid. Everybody buys groceries, right? So everybody's impacted by groceries. And if it ain't rent, it's a mortgage, right? Yeah. If it ain't a mortgage, it's property taxes. And so I think ultimately, like, when you start to engage people around all the shared issues that we face about how to improve all of our material conditions, I think it helps to bring people together, but also creating cultural spaces too that people, deeply value. We all, we Black folk, we love music, we love art. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So really engaging people around some of those things, I think becomes helpful. And I actually think that's something that, I've been talking to some friends of mine, we got to do much more of that too. Yeah. Like really engaging around the arts and really trying to politicize people and give them real entry points. And I think that can bring us together across generations if we sort of, have these sort of shared entry points. But I feel fortunate to have been able to build trust with seniors, build trust with Queen Frederica Bey, who was, one of our staunchest supporters. And, we still organize with Bonita Homes on South 10th Street. So, and she forged that relationship. So just, just people who've been deeply loyal, not to me as an individual, but to the ideas that we have, right? Yeah. And so to the extent that we are sort of a vehicle for those ideas, they'll be with us. And that means that there's an accountability structure there, right? So people ain't going to be with you just because they love you as an individual. They're going to be with you because we have a shared value system. We have a shared sort of vision for the world. And I think that Queen Frederica, she's that kind of person. So I think I'm fortunate enough that in Newark, we have so many of those kind of people, but nobody quite like Frederica Beck.
Absolutely. She would love to hear you say that. So. But I mean, when we're talking about family, because, of course, my mother's my motivation, my inspiration. She's the reason that I exist in the world the way I do. And I say that every chance I get. And we saw in your celebration, your mom, your brother, like, what was the family dynamic like for you? And were they proponents? Were they propelling you, or were they, advising you, no, don't do it. This is hard. This is terrible. These are horrible people. Don't do it.
Yeah.
What was that for you, for that family dynamic?
Yeah, me and my family, we super close. It's 5 of us who grew up in the same household. I have an older sister as well who didn't grow up in the household, but it's my older sister. And the siblings were close in age, right? So the first 3 are back to back to back, right? I'm the third of that. And then my sister's 2.5 years younger than me, and then my baby brother is 5 years younger than her. So fairly close in age. My parents, immigrants, came to this country, really didn't have a deep sense of politics. But I do remember my father often talking about when he lived in the Ivy Hill apartments that he used to see Ken Gibson going for a jog. Yeah. And he thought it was just crazy that, like, a mayor, a political person could just feel so free to be just jogging around and not feel like it's dangerous, right? And so for him, that's like, oh man, that's America. And he also had his sense of national politics. Like we're from Nigeria, but my father went to Cameroon when he was younger. So he missed the civil war in Nigeria because he was in Cameroon. And he was with his brother. He became an educator, and he was trying to get to the United States. And I think Nixon or Ford might have been a president at the time. And so he goes to the embassy trying to get some paperwork, doesn't work. But then they told him that, well, there's a new president, Carter's there. And so when Carter got in, he goes there and he's able to get his paperwork, right? So now he has this deep love for Carter, right? So he comes to this country loving Carter. That's the guy who got me in here, right? So I think he's somebody who had a sense of politics. But when I sort of came to politics, I think they sort of expect their children to really just go and just try to be as successful as you can. Go make as much money as you can. Don't struggle like we did. But I think what they don't realize is that we paying attention to you in the ways in which you engage, in the way in which you treat people. And so I think that my sort of choice to run comes out of family in terms of how they saw the world, and also comes out of educators too, educators who poured deeply into me. And when I chose to run at first, I think folks were like, huh? I remember when I ran in high school, when I ran in when I was 18, they were like, you doing what? So, but by the time we run for city council, man, unfortunately my father wasn't here, but my fam was like, they was with us, they was throwing down, they was with whatever, they was at the doors, everybody came out every Saturday. And when you start with that foundation, I tell people all the time, my secret weapon is every single thing I do, I start with 5. Because I got 4 siblings. So some people might start at 1. I start with 5. And so now it's building from 5 to 10 to 15. And I think I'm lucky in that way. And, just that celebration, my mother was always wanting to celebrate after we won. And
that was her celebration.
That was her, absolutely.
Everybody was absolutely clear. That was her celebration.
Yes, it was. But it was a beautiful time, beautiful experience. And we also got to bring in some of our culture into it, which to me was special.
Yes, it was really beautiful. It was beautiful. I appreciated being there.
And I appreciate you coming.
It's just, there's so much that people don't know. Because again, we talk all the time about all politics are local, all politics are local, all politics are local. And I still don't think that people really understand what that means, and that everything starts at the local level, so that's why I believe, when you started galvanizing and organizing around the district leaders, people didn't understand the importance of that, because again, you're building a foundation. It's like building a house. And I don't care how beautiful it is. If the foundation is shaky, everything is going to be a mess, So talk about building that foundation and the importance of community engagement, because right now, we're engaged. We have a municipal election, school board election, and trying to fight the apathy, trying to fight the weariness, coming off of a special election and a governor's election. People are tired.
Absolutely.
Yes, they're weary, but sometimes people are just mistrustful, because they're just like, look, y'all just lie. You don't keep your promises. You're shady. You're doing this, you're doing that. And so getting people to trust you, how, or did you overcome that? Did you break the seal? And, because you did something, because people see you and they trust you. They have a genuine sense that you are a good guy, that you keep your word. How were you able to overcome the negative stereotypes of Newark politician?
Yeah. And I appreciate that question and that framing. I think, politics is hard in so many ways because, like you said, there is this deep distrust of government. I think people have seen government not work for them for so many years. I think folks pour into candidates, pour into leadership. And in the leadership, it's not that they don't deliver, but maybe doesn't always deliver in ways that people can feel and experience. So I think that becomes really hard. But for me, when I think about even just our effort at the district leader level, I think in politics, information is currency, right? Like it's something that I deeply value. And I think that, all political leaders deeply value. And so going after, like doing the ground level work for the district leaders, that's information ultimately, right? So when you have people all across the ward, that's information loops all across the ward. So you get to know and hear about what's going on and what people are experiencing, but you also get to disseminate information too, right? So it becomes this two-way dynamic where you can share all the things you're doing, share all the things you care about, and be honest about the contradictions. Like there are real contradictions in government. There's real contradictions in capitalism. There's real contradictions in our society. And as much as we try to push against them, like sometimes those forces don't always like yield the fruit that we want. But I think being honest with people about it, but also showing people the ways in which government can work for them. When I first got to Trenton, before I even got to Trenton, in December actually, so we get sworn in January 13th, but in December, I called the speaker's office and I said, there's a couple of bills I really want to work on. One of the most important bills I want to work on is banning surveillance pricing in the grocery industry. And the reason why is because I saw the ways in which the grocery industry, the Instacarts, the Walmarts, the Amazons, were really using people's information to price gouge. And I said, if we can build trust with people if we show them the ways in which we're fighting for them in a really clear way, clear, discrete policy way that we're fighting for you. So we went after that. And so we pushed our bill, we wrote the bill, we pushed it, we got it out of committee. It's going to pass. It hasn't passed yet, but it will definitely pass. And just really trying to show people the ways in which we're fighting for them in really clear ways. Everybody buys groceries. So how do we show them and demonstrate that, this is possible, and then we'll demonstrate what else is possible, the bigger things. And I think if people can trust you with smaller things, they'll start to trust you with bigger and more important things over time. And we try to be honest with folks, man. We try to make sure that we do things the right way. We try to be vulnerable too, like about, listen, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what we think we can do. This is what we can't do. I've been in contentious community meetings like we all have where, people have these deep demands and sometimes you can meet them and sometimes you can't. Because I think all of us have, a limited sort of power as politicians. But I think what we can always do is be honest, and what we can always do is fight for people and show them the ways in which we fight. And I think that's why people are so excited about Zoran. I mean, even if you look at, even the folks who, I think they're backward, but the folks who are excited about Trump, it's this idea of somebody fighting for you. People want to feel like you're fighting for them. They don't want to feel like you're just fighting for yourself, but if this is just some sort of career ambition that you've always had that you're fulfilling. I think people want to see you as somebody who's a servant leadership. So, I think that's what we try to bring to the table as best we can.
But it's that open and honest communication, it's that transparency, and just, being relatable, and being accessible. And that's one thing. And I appreciate you so much for that. And I thank you personally for being that person for me, helping me out, answering every time I call, responding to my multiple texts and all my many, many questions during the special election process and even now. And I just really appreciate your support. Because even though we're in, this day and time, it's still a little different for women. We still feel like we have to show up differently and sometimes still get treated differently.
Absolutely.
It's a different process. And even with the family, all the women around me were like, yes, let's do it. Every man in my life was like, please don't do this. Don't do this, because they were afraid for me. They don't want me to be hurt. They don't, politics is a dirty game and and they were being protective, but it's just, just seeing the different, these are the same people who will have gone hard for other, elected officials, men, but didn't want, their girl to get hurt. But you have been able to navigate so many different things. I mean, when you're talking about school board, you're talking about Ward Council and now Assembly, But with the school board in the West Ward, you were home.
Mm-hmm.
You were surrounded by your village and people that have known you your whole life and love you and supported you and you work with, and, you know, you're an attorney and, you know, you're going to school with. And then you go to Trenton with these people who may or may not, you know, look at you or feel the same way about you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you've had to show up differently? How have you been able to make that transition and stay authentic and keep your integrity intact while still fighting the good fight for Brick City?
Yeah. Now, that's a great question. First, I just want to jump back to what you named about women in politics. I think so often in our community, if you go to any community meeting, it's going to be dominated by women.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a campaign meeting, it could be a district leader meeting, it could be just any sort of community forum.
Mm-hmm.
It's dominated by women because we know the ways in which women show up. We know the ways in which women build up our communities.
Yeah.
But when it comes to leadership, then there becomes this gap, right?
Yeah.
And the leadership often looks male, you know? And so I do think that I appreciate you for stepping into the arena and being willing to push back against that, because it is true. It's much, much, much more difficult for women in politics. And I've seen it through my own direct experience and just observing politics. I mean, we saw it at the national level too, right?
Yeah.
It's much more difficult for women. And in terms of the Trenton question, I think I try to show up as myself everywhere I go.
Mm-hmm.
I try to show up as deep and as authentic as I can possibly be. But you are dealing with different dynamics. I remember I don't really share the story much, but my first I think it was at Mikey's inauguration. I'm backstage, meeting different people, and I introduced myself to someone. And, my name I have a unique name. My name is not simple. So I am very used to people pronouncing it differently. And so that doesn't bother me an iota, not one bit.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one legislator who struggled with it a bit and said, I'm just going to call you Bob. I said, no, my name is Chigozie.
Yeah.
Like, let's work on it together. It's Chigozie. So, and I think, now I don't think anybody would accept Bob if they named Bob, right? But the point is that, you are dealing with a different dynamic once you get down and you engage with a broader group in the state. But ultimately, I think I will always show up as myself. I will always represent the interests that I think are that are true, that are right. And I'll do my best to represent the positions that I think are correct. And I'm going to fight for Newark. I'm going to fight for Maplewood, South Orange, Irvington, Hillside, because I think that the thing that gets us over the hump is going to be a multiracial working class coalition, which I think includes people from all of those different places. But it is different. There ain't no doubt about it. It's different being down in Trenton. Trenton ain't Newark, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Trenton is not Essex County. And you're dealing with 80 people instead of maybe a 9-member body. So it's a lot more personalities to deal with. Yeah. Anything you want to get done, you need 41 people in the Assembly, 21 people in the Senate, and you need a governor. Yeah. So if you don't have those things, you can't make something happen. And so I don't get caught up in purity politics, because ultimately, anytime if I'm in a room by myself, I get to be pure. Because I'm there by myself. I can be as pure as I want to be, as right as I want to be. No matter what I say, everything goes. But the moment you enter in a room with other people, you have to give something up if you're going to work together. Yeah. And so I view Trenton as it's practice. You might have to give some things up in order to work together. In order to get my bills passed. I mean, I had a much stronger bill when I talk about the Fair Price Protection Act and banning surveillance pricing. I had a super strong bill. Yeah. Had to give a couple things up in order to try to get it passed. Now, there's certain red lines that we have. There's principles we won't go beyond. But ultimately, when you're trying to move things in legislation, you always give things up. And I think it's important for us to be honest with people about that, why we're giving it up and how we're still holding on to our values. So I try to talk to people super clearly about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, so that people don't feel like, well, I thought you was. No, I am, actually. You know what I'm saying? Here's how. So just trying to always be, super clear, but recognize you can never be pure in this business.
Yeah.
So
no, I definitely understand that. So we are going to transition. We have another part. I have a couple of things. We're going to kind of switch it up a little bit. Yeah. But right now we're going to break. Mic Check Newark. We are here with the Assemblyman, and we'll be back for the next segment. Stay tuned. Hey, Newark. This is your Councilwoman for the Central Ward, Amina Bey. And we are here with Mic Check Newark with our very special guest, New Jersey State Assemblyman Chigozie Onyema. So we were talking before about civic engagement and your work with district leaders, your work with youth, your grassroots coalition and organization. And, in our Central Ward office, we have a program, Council Member for the Day.
Yes.
And we bring in students from all over the Central Ward, traditional Newark Public Schools, as well as charter schools, because our children are our children. We don't do the us and them at all. And, we have a class on civic engagement. We tour them around. We have, the mayor and the chief of staff and other council people come and talk to them. And what would be your advice to them? Because so many of them, not necessarily interested in politics, a couple of them, but they're interested in public service. And they want to know how they can best serve their community, even if they don't run for office. Because again, a lot of young people are a little skeptical about being an elected official because they equate that with being something, not necessarily above board. So what advice would you give our students about civic engagement and being a public servant?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, I'd say politics. Electoral politics is one form of politics, right? Mm-hmm. I think about you. You've been involved, in my opinion, in politics your whole life. You've been organizing. You've been fighting for people. That's a form of politics, right? It's only more recently that you chose to engage in electoral politics. But you've been involved in the work forever. And so I would tell young people that whether it's public service, politics, however they sort of shape it and call it, that, there's so many different ways to be involved in it. And I think the best thing to do is to think about what are you interested in, right? Mm-hmm. And then take what you're interested in. And I think, try to fight for people. So, for example, one bill that we have, right? We haven't dropped it yet, but we have a bill we're pushing, I think we're going to call it the Beauty Justice Act. Mm-hmm. But the concept of it is to say that, in all our beauty products, whether it's makeup, whether it's face wash, whether it's lotion, there's a bunch of different toxins in them. And so we're trying to say that there's certain toxins that we shouldn't allow in those products because it's affecting our community, right? It disproportionately affects Black women. We saw the ways in which hair relaxer can lead to certain health outcomes. And so we also know that if you use face wash, when the water goes down a drain, ultimately it doesn't stay separate from our water stream. It enters into our water stream. When you go ahead and clean out water, it doesn't mean that when you process water so it's drinking water, some things you can't get rid of. So it's potentially can get into our bodies in other ways. So the point I'm making is that we're trying to legislate around an issue that I think deeply affects our community, but around an issue that I think a lot of people might be interested in. I know a ton of young women who are interested in beauty products.
Absolutely.
So there's a way in which you engage in politics if that's what you're interested in, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't have to sort of think of politics as if you're not interested in affordable housing, that's okay. Mm-hmm. We got a whole range of issues that we need to confront as a community that you can kind of, I think, use as an entry point to fight. Mm-hmm. The other thing I would say is that the choices that we make, the behaviors that we sort of exude, and even the mistakes that we make, they reverberate across generations, right? Mm-hmm. So the Native Americans, they have this 7-generation principle. And the whole concept of it is that what you do has an impact, not just in your lifetime or your children's lifetime or your grandchildren's lifetime, but across 7 generations, right? So however you choose to show up in this world, make sure that you show up in a way that builds toward eternity. Show up in a way that I will be proud of this in 7 generations, that the children and the people that I will never get to see, never get to meet, they'll be proud of the way I showed up in the world in 2026, 100 years from now, 200 years from now. So always make choices and decisions that you feel like reflect that, right? So I would say center that thinking as you engage the world. That's one piece of advice I would give to young people. And then the other thing is I'd say your imagination is important. Ultimately, everything that we experience in this world is the result of someone's imagination.
That's right.
Somebody imagined a world that is as unjust as it is, as beautiful as it is, as ugly as it is, as whatever as it is. Someone imagined it. Mm-hmm. And we have a choice to imagine something different. So don't ever get caught up in the here and now and think that's the only thing that's possible. Mm-hmm. It is not the only thing that's possible. Harriet Tubman, right across the street.
That's right.
Tubman Square. If Harriet Tubman accepted the world that she inherited as the only world that's possible, we might not be where we are today. If so many people before us accepted the world as it is as the only possible world, we wouldn't be where we are. So just know that we have an opportunity to shape the world that we want. So think about all the beautiful things that you want to see and try to force it into existence through whatever work you choose to do. It could be electoral, it could be community-wise, it could be in business, whatever you choose to do, try to force that world into existence. And I think, future generations will benefit from that and be proud of that. So
I love that. So when we talk about another world is possible, another world is possible right here at home in our city of Newark. And so for me, as a newly elected council person and and hopefully newly elected again.
And will be reelected. Yes, that's right. May 12th, vote Amina Bey.
May 12th, yes, he won. What do you see for us? What are some of the things that you would like to see the council concentrate on to make another world possible for the city of Newark?
Yeah, I think that when I think about elected officials, I think about the city of Newark. Newark is a city that's rapidly developing.
Yes.
And it's developing in multiple ways, right? We talk about all the development that's happening downtown in the Central Ward. The port has been expanding and continuing to develop. And I think the key for all of us is and it's not just on the council, it's all of us. How do we figure out how to make sure that development, that growth is widely shared, right? How do we spread it out in a way that it benefits all Newarkers? And that's not some sort of easy question. You don't get to just press a button and that happens, right? You have to be creative. You have to be thoughtful. You have to kind of really push and push. And so when I think about the development happening in the city, it's important that it does happen. We do want a new built environment. We just want to make sure that we benefit from it, whether it's jobs, whether it's, rents that folks can afford. So I think we just want, whether it's the council, whether it's the state legislature, whether it's our county government, everybody to use every single tool at their disposal to make sure that we develop things in a way that's thoughtful. I'd love to see the city of Newark have more cooperatives. I'd love to see more social housing. I'd love for us to leverage, whatever sort of powers we have, whether it's with abatements through our budget process to make sure that we push our developers to do right by the community. And I've seen folks do that. We have real examples of that. As much as sort of folks act like nothing happened, there's a lot of real examples of that. And I think that's a powerful thing. And I think the more that we do in that direction, I think the better. When I think about the West Ward, it's a largely residential ward. So it means that what you can do looks different than maybe in a central ward where there's different pieces of land that you might be able to pull together.
Right.
But I think the entire council and the mayor have to continue to work together to make sure that we, make sure that as the built environment transforms, the people who live in that built environment, who inhabit that built environment, transform along with it. And that's, I think, all of our work. That's all of our challenge. And we're all responsible for that. So
I think one of the things is that people confuse wards with silos, and that we're supposed to be just only concentrating on this thing, this thing. But the fact is that we're just parts of a whole.
Yes.
And one of my priorities have been to let's look and see what's already on the books, okay, and make sure that it's enforced. It's strengthen the ordinance because there are a lot of things that are already in place, the things that we talk about that we want to do. And when you talk about development, whether we're talking about the first source agreement to ensure that Newark residents are the first to get the first opportunities to be on these jobs, make sure Newark vendors, are at the forefront of getting these contracts and being a part of these, development projects. We have billions with a B, billions of dollars of development that's already in place, that's moving forward in this city, and so much more that's even being proposed. And we have to ensure that Newarkers get a piece of it. And so we were talking in a previous segment about being open, of course, like you said, to development, because we want the city to grow, we want to expand, we want to move forward, we want to evolve, and we also want to be open. We're not closed off. We want people to come. We want this to be an attractive place where people will come and want to live and work and play and develop and make money and spend money and do all of the things. But we also need to safeguard the people who were here.
Yes, absolutely.
Who are generations in from the Great Migration, who stood by after the rebellions and held their ground when we had white flight and all of the different things. And so they fought to make sure that we had Black and brown representation in the city. And so we owe them, we owe it to them to make sure that the city is all of those things for them. And so we have so many laws and ordinances that currently exist that are not being enforced. And so part of my responsibility is to make sure that happens before we start, because people don't know, but start creating something new. You talk about tax abatement. There are a lot of people that don't know that there are residential tax abatements that are available in the city of Newark, that people can get a 5-year tax abatement. This information, again, we talk about communication. We have to communicate to the residents what the resources are, give them the information so they know, because there are so many people that are under the impression that this is not for them.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when NJ was built. I remember the protests. This is not for us. I remember when, Prudential Center was built. This is not for us to protest. And now we're getting that with so many different things. But if you provide people with the information and make sure that the laws that are currently in place are enforced to the benefit of the residents, then you won't have so many people who are angry and coming to the council meeting and ready to curse us out and call us out a name and talk about our mamas and everything else. Because when people become frustrated when they don't know, and when they feel that they're shut out and they feel that you're hiding information from them. And so just to tie a bow around all of this, I want to know, what do you see as the connection between the work that I do and the work that you do? How do the state representatives and the local representatives work together for the whole and for the community?
Yeah, I want to jump to that. I want to just pick up on something that you said as well, though, about development. Like, often development is not wooden beams. It's not steel. It's not concrete. Development is about people. It's ultimately about people. And I think people have to see themselves in all that's happening. Yeah. And we as leaders have to see people in all that we're doing, right? Yeah. So I think that becomes critical. The other thing I think is that when I think about a developer, developers might have consultants. They might have lobbyists. They have banks. They have resources. Residents have us. Yeah. Right? So that means that we have to do our part to hold the line. And so the kind of leadership I think that we need in the city is leadership that centers people and recognizes that while those developers have everybody else, our residents got us, right? And so we have to show up in a way that honors that. And in terms of the relationship, I think the relationship is critical. I think, right now, I'm not sure where Newark is in terms of the specific ask from the state right now, but I know that, there's reports out there about Jersey City asking for $150 million from the state, right? Newark, I'm sure, is going to need some dollars from the state. Part of it is that we have to help make what Newark needs to do possible, right? Newark doesn't exist on an island. No city, no municipality does. And Newark is not the only municipality that needs aid, right? So, it's making sure that Newark gets their fair share, whether that's our public schools, whether that's our city government, whether it's the different tools around development. And to the extent that Newark doesn't get their fair share, that's on legislators. That's on us. So if Newark's not getting what it needs from the state, then people should come see me and say, hey, brother, what you doing down in Trenton? You're supposed to be making sure we get our fair share. If Newark schools are not fully funded, people should come see me and say, hey, brother, what you doing? Our schools ain't fully funded. And I think that's a critical piece. But also it's a question of information. Like there's just things that people need from state government that it's not your office's job to get them. Right. It's my office's job to get them, right? So for example, if somebody wants a stay-in-J property tax credit, if somebody wants the anchor benefits for renters, like it's our job to make sure that they get that. And I think too often what does happen is folks know their city council members. Folks know the people who are closest to them in government, and they don't always know the state legislators or the folks at the county level. And I think it's our job to be visible so that people know the kind of things that we offer and what we need, and also show up in partnership with our city council colleagues and folks at different levels of government so that folks know, hey, listen, it ain't all on one person. Right. I think about the West Ward, Councilman Kelly is the only elected official out of the West Ward. There's no at-large council person. Well, he was for a while. Obviously, I am now too, but there was no at-large council person. There was nobody in state government. There was nobody in county government. So you're talking about one person thinking about all the interests of the West Ward. So I think it's helpful now that you have at least two people in the elected office thinking about that. I think with the Central Ward, it's helpful that it's you and Assemblywoman Spate thinking about that. So building power within our wards, within our community is important because it gives people different entry points to get support, to get help, and it makes sure that people are fighting at different levels of government for the interests of those residents. So I think that the partnership is us really being thoughtful about how can we show up and be supportive of the things you need? When folks come to me about issues, I should be able to go to you or go to our council people and say, hey, here's what those folks need at this level. And if that partnership works really well, I think the community benefits. If folks are arguing and fighting and bickering, it makes it very difficult, I think, for our residents to get served in a way that they deserve. So.
Well, Assemblyman, I thank you. I thank you for all that you do for our people, for our community. I thank you for what you do for me. And I thank you for being here today on Mic Check Newark.
Thank you.
We look forward to all of the wonderful things that you're going to do in Trenton and beyond. and know that you have our full and unwavering support.
Thank you so much. And just know that support is reciprocated. Really proud of all that you've done in your 100-some-odd days in city government. I remember looking at the report that you gave about your 100 days. I'm like, dang, I got to get on Councilwoman Bey's level. But just know that you have my deep and unwavering support as well. I'm incredibly proud of you. Looking forward to continuing to partner together, and anything you need from me, you got it.
I appreciate it. So Newark, that's it for this segment of Mic Check Newark. We're going to check us out next time, and we appreciate you tuning in. See you next time.
Peace.
So Central Ward, we just want to thank you for joining us for another episode of Mic Check Newark. As always, we're here for you, and we want to make sure that you can contact us. So if you want to engage our office and attend one of our Before the Gavel sessions and have one-on-one meetings, or if you want to sign up for the Central Ward Download newspaper so you can get the information firsthand, please contact our office. You can call at 973-733-5870. That's 973-733-5870. We have additional information up on the screen. You can engage us on social media, follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.